In this essay writing guide, I will be attempting to answer this essay question while demonstrating step by step the basic fundamentals of essay writing. This guide will be straight to the point, simplistic, and will not involve any difficult steps. They will be easy to understand, and it will be easy to follow. The main thing to keep in mind is at the start of the writing process is that there needs to be some separation between the thinking stage, where you come up with most of your ideas and opinions to later be expressed, and the writing stage, where you flesh out your ideas in the most sophisticated way possible. Both of these are incredibly complex processes. It is very difficult to come up with your own opinions. It is very difficult to come up with your own ideas. And it is also simultaneously a very difficult task in order to flesh out these ideas in the best way possible. To do both would be foolish. To do both would be as if one decided to stand up on stage unprepared and to give a speech on something without any prior planning whatsoever. Obviously, this would be foolish. And so there must be some separation between the thinking stage and the writing stage. This separation does not have to be dramatic in any way. It does not have to be very complex. It can simply be yourself, a pen, and a blank piece of paper scribbling out some ideas. As long as the separation is there in some way or other, then you will be saved the trouble of having to improvise your thoughts as you write them. Now, of course, this is not to say that you should not write out your thoughts. In fact, writing out your thoughts is the best way for you to explore them. However, these written out thoughts are nothing more than a stream of consciousness spilling over onto a piece of paper. They cannot be the final product. So I encourage you to write out your thoughts, or to conduct your research and then write out your thoughts onto a blank piece of paper, and then take a break so that you can process your thoughts and come back to them later and then turn them into your final product. Now, it's all well and good for me to come out and say you should be thinking about what you're going to write before you write. But how is this thinking complete? How do you come up with your own original thoughts and ideas on a topic, especially if it's a topic as complex as, say, for example, terrorism and poverty? Well, ideally, you would need to read. That would be the number one piece of advice. Read and try to figure out what most people think about this topic. If you continuously read, what you will find is that not everyone thinks the same way about certain issues, and not everyone takes the same stance. This is true in every field and in every subject. There will be some disagreement. For example, in our example of poverty and terrorism, is there a relationship between poverty and terrorism, for example, or does poverty play a role in terrorism? You will find that many academics disagree on this point. Some will say that poverty is the root cause of terrorism, but not in the way that we think. It is a case of relative poverty. It is a case of a comparative poverty of injustice. Others will say that poverty has no role whatsoever to play in the development of radicalization and terrorism, stating that if this was the case, then the world's poorest countries would be the world's most rife in terrorism. This is not true. And of course, some will completely dismiss the idea that you should even look at poverty to begin with, because it doesn't matter where radicalization occurs, everyone's a victim of it, and rich countries will suffer. So there will always be disagreement in terms of the topic. And when we are thinking and exploring the topic for ourselves, the best way to start is to see what other people think, to see the other opinions, to find the conflicts out for ourselves. And then based on what we've discovered, we try to form our own opinions. What are the most convincing ideas? What are the most convincing theories? What am I convinced by based on my values, my analytical skills, my own thinking, and my experiences? Do I think, for example, that poverty does certainly have some role to play in the development of terrorism, or that it is perhaps a partial role? Is it a direct causality or an indirect causality? Is there something in between? Is it poverty impacting something else that then impacts people that causes them to become radicalized? Read and try to come up with your own opinions and your own ideas. They do not have to be 100% original, groundbreaking ideas, not every time. The ideas that I wrote in my essay were very, very, very regurgitated, but because I presented them in a way that was original, and because I did form my own opinion, and I was intelligent in how I justified my opinion based on what I found convincing and based on the explanations that I thought made sense and could be applied to a number of examples, I was rewarded for my original thought. This does not mean that the ideas were groundbreaking, but they were presented in an original and refreshing way. Now, let's move up here. Once we've decided on our opinion and our stance on the topic, and we've decided why we're convinced, we've gathered a little bit of information as to why we think a certain way and why we've developed a stance on the topic, we want to reorient our thoughts and organize them a little bit. The way we want to organize our thoughts in this way is, it's very important that there is one major controlling idea, and that idea is called a thesis. Every good essay has a thesis, and a thesis is merely the main point or the main interpretation and the main controlling idea of your essay or your piece of work. And your thesis centers your essay. Your thesis focuses your essay, and it focuses your ideas, and it focuses your interpretations and the expression of your opinions. This is not something that just applies in writing, but also in good conversation and in good presenting. If all of your contributions and all of your expressions center around one idea, then it is very easy to engage with your idea. It is very easy to engage in what you're writing about or what you're talking about, and it is very easy to comprehend and to understand and therefore be convinced by what you are trying to say. It will also streamline your essay writing process. It will save you a lot of time and a lot of effort by cutting out the fat and ensuring that you get straight to the point. What are you trying to say? What is your opinion? What do you think about this? Summarize it and express it in one word. This may seem difficult. It may seem very difficult to summarize, for example, a 2,000 word essay or a 3,000 word essay into one idea or one point. However, this is the test to make sure that you know what you're talking about. A 10,000 word dissertation will have to be summarized in one sentence. It absolutely has to be summarized in a very short part called the abstract at the start of every single dissertation. This applies for work that is 10,000 words long, 75,000 words long, or even 120,000 words long. As Feynman likes to say, Einstein, as I just checked, if you can't express an idea simply, then you do not know what you're talking about, or you don't understand the idea. So it is essential that you have your thesis, and it's essential that you come up with your points as to why you believe your thesis. So this looks very good on paper. Let's see how this looks like in practice in relation to our essay question here. From what kind of socioeconomic background do most terrorists seem to have come? What does this suggest about the role of poverty in terrorism? So let's see what I can do with this guide. So I have gone away and I have come up with the majority. Let's move over here. With the majority of my points for my essay. As you can see, this process is clearly not easy. I have had to do a good amount of research. However, this is the hard part. This is the thinking part. And once this is done, believe it or not, the rest of the essay is not that difficult. So to illustrate, I have my main point here. Relative poverty, not absolute poverty, plays a role in terrorism. This took me some time to come up with, but it is the main idea of my essay. Relative poverty is that you are poorer, or that a group is poorer than another, and that they are visible to you. Absolute poverty is poverty in totality. Without any comparison, you are poor and you are suffering. Now, the argument here is pretty strong. Not strong in the sense that it is good, but strong in the sense that it is decisive. And you can disagree with it, and you can prove it, and you can disprove it. That's how you know you have a good thesis statement. For more information on thesis statements, there is a full guide on my website. Feel free to visit. But essentially, I am putting myself out there, and I am taking a very, very slightly controversial stance here by saying that it's not absolute poverty, but relative poverty. And I've now put myself in a position where I have to prove myself. So how do I prove myself? Well, first of all, I have to demonstrate that it's not absolute poverty that causes terrorism. So we look to the points to the left. Most terrorists aren't poor. It speaks for itself. Most who do end up radicalized, according to this person, are from the middle class. I further prove my point. The leaders are quite educated. Educated people tend to be not poor. And we know here that they're not poor, but we also know here that they're not uneducated. They could afford to go to university, and they could afford to go to college. Right? So that's the absolute poverty part dealt with. But how do I prove that it's relative poverty? Well, I've proven that it's not poverty in general. How do I prove that there is a comparative element? Well, first of all, I cite a study here that theorizes that it is the unmet social contract. And an unmet social contract simply means that if you are promised something by the government without the government coming out and saying it, but if you're sort of promised the idea that if you go to school, if you go to university, you can get a good job, you can sustain your family, that's a social contract. That's what's owed to you, the individual, if you follow X, Y, and Z. So if the citizen fulfills their part of the social contract, if they go to school and they work hard, but they don't get the promised benefits, they don't get the money, they don't get the life that they think that they deserve, then that's an unmet social contract, and that might start something big. That might start violence or conflict within a country. There's also the relative deprivation theory by Richard Gere, which I cite here. They are unjustly deprived of economic and political advantages enjoyed by other groups. And later on in the essay, of course, I would have to prove this, and I would have to give some examples of how this is the case. But essentially, the ideas are concise, they are clear, they are simple, and easy to understand. A good essay isn't good because it uses big words or big fancy complex ideas. On the contrary, the more complex your ideas, the more it seems that you're trying to hide behind the veil of complexity and not expose your thoughts. Instead, what you need to do is you need to boil down your ideas and to expose them in the most bare formats, and to be genuine and honest, and to be open to disagreement. That's how you prove to yourself and to the reader that you understand your ideas, and your reader will be able to follow you, what you're trying to say, and they will be able to, first of all, comprehend, and then understand, and then ideally be convinced by your simplistic ideas. This is the planning stage complete. I now have my main idea, my thesis, I have my subcategories of points, I have all the ideas here. Prove my thesis statements. There is no fat, there is no wasted space. I can now proceed to the writing stage, which is made much, much easier because I've completed this now. And so we proceed. I am constantly moving, but that is fine. Now, I see a lot of creators on this platform on YouTube, in many essay writing guides. They always start by telling the students how to write the introduction and then go into the main body. I disagree with this strategy. I disagree with writing your introduction first, because how can you introduce that which does not exist? How can you introduce an essay that has not been written? It simply does not make sense. you will inevitably write a hollow introduction for something that doesn't exist, for ideas that are not fully fleshed out yet, and ideas that aren't fully thought out. You have thought about them in the planning stage, perhaps, yes, that's true, but you have not written about them. And it makes it much more difficult to write the introduction, which will not be good anyway. And you will inevitably have to come back to it and fix it up, and re-include the ideas that you later came up with in the writing stage. So do not write your introduction first. Instead, flesh out your paragraphs. Now, what are your paragraphs? Well, your paragraphs are your main ideas. So my paragraphs are my main ideas, which will be introduced with a topic sentence. But these are my main ideas. This is the main idea number 1, main idea number 2, main idea number 3, main idea number 4, and therefore we have paragraph number 1, paragraph number 2, paragraph number 3, paragraph number 4. Simple. But how do we actually flesh out and write these paragraphs? Well, we use the somewhat dreaded point, evidence, explain format. This will be introduced in schools, but it will not be explored fully due to whatever reason. I don't know why. But you will use, if you use the Peel format, it makes it very easy and straightforward to write out good, strong paragraphs. The point is a summary of your main idea. Summarize it into one strong, concrete idea. For example, terrorism is not caused by poverty, or most terrorists do not have a poor background. They are from the middle class. Evidence. You need to have some evidence to back up your point, especially if your point is expressed in the way that I just expressed it. Well, I can cite various studies, and I can say that most of them come from the middle class, as confirmed by Silk in his study, where he states that 60% or 70% of the terrorists that he studied came from the middle class, and in fact, some of them even came from the upper classes. You do not have to be poor to be a terrorist. And so, the explanation. You add a little bit more. This is your own sort of extension of the ideas. And here you might say something like, if they are not poor, then there is not a direct causality of poverty. We also saw this in the previous, or we will see this in the previous point or next point. And then finally, the link. Now the link is very easily, it is the connection between your idea and your thesis. How does this side idea prove this? Well, very simply, if terrorists aren't poor, then the role that poverty plays in causing terrorism is not a direct one. So if you have to visualize it, this is your link, this line right here, connecting this to this. In practice, it might look something like this. So I've gone away with my point, and I've written up a paragraph, which you can see here. And I've color-coded my point, which is in red. Firstly, there is no causal link between poverty and terrorism. It's quite a bold claim, so I've evidenced it with my next sentence here. I've even used the word evidence. I don't hesitate, which it's entirely fine to be explicit about your techniques. I've explained it a little bit more. So this is my own writing, which I've then backed up with a second source, if there truly was a direct link. And then finally, I've linked it to the main idea. Therefore, if there is a relationship between poverty and terrorism, see, I've not completely denied the existence of a connection between poverty and terrorism, because I know I'm going to write about it later, because I've completed the planning stage. So I have my link here, and I've created it so that it introduces the idea that it's not a direct causal link, implying that there is another link that I will speak about later. This is only possible by the fact that I've completed my planning stage and thinking stage earlier. And so there you go. This is a paragraph. I rinse and repeat this for my other paragraphs, and I flesh them all out. I can do this separately. I don't have to keep them all in mind at the same time. I can simply flesh out each paragraph on its own. After I complete this, and all these paragraphs, I will have to think of the best way to order my paragraphs. Alright, let's move here. Okay, so this is from our guide on our website, where we explain the various orders that you can follow when presenting your paragraphs in your essay. Now, the order is somewhat important because it is the order that the reader is exposed to your ideas, so you have to be intelligent and you have to think, in what order do I want him to see these? Don't double think and don't think, oh, do I need to change my ideas? No, your ideas as they are. What is the best order that they are viewed in? And there are many ways that you can do this. You can follow chronological order, as is used in expository writing, and so it could be as if you are presenting them in a report, or you're presenting the ideas as they appeared, or the events as they appeared in history. Or you can order the paragraphs with the idea of significance or importance in mind. Which ideas are the most significant? Which ideas are the most important? Which ideas should you present first so that the reader is struck with your strongest points and is therefore more likely to be convinced, with the less impactful points acting as a backup later on? And so there are many, many ways that you can order this. In my essay, I chose to order the paragraphs in a slightly more logical way, because I wanted to first identify that it was not absolute poverty. It wasn't just poverty in a vacuum that caused terrorism, but poverty that played a role in injustice, and poverty and unfairness, and the perception of people deserving and not deserving, or people not getting what they deserve. So I thought of a unique ordering for my essay, and that was the way that I thought this is going to be the most impactful way to convince the reader of my points. Similarly, there may be a unique order to your points, so you have to put some thought into the order that your paragraphs appear in. Once this is done, you're at the end stage. Your paragraphs are all fleshed out, and there is not much work left to do. All that is left is for you to write your introduction and conclusion, which can be done in 5 minutes or less. So, if our essay was written as we discussed, and it was written in the point evidence explained link format, then our first sentence will summarize the idea and will make the point explicitly and clearly. The next paragraph will do the same, and the third paragraph will do the same, and if there is a fourth and a fifth, then the same will be done there. So in an introduction, we simply write 1 or 2 sentences to introduce the essay. This might be a hook, an interesting factoid, or something to express upon the reader the significance of the topic. And then you follow it up with the context or the ideas to instill within the reader an appreciation for the ideas of which you are about to convey. And then you very explicitly, you state your thesis statement. So that's done here. So in this essay, I will illustrate / explore / examine / appraise or evaluate XYZ. XYZ being your thesis statement. Actually, I should just write that down. Thesis statement. So once your thesis statement has been explicitly stated, you need to go ahead and tell the reader how you are going to prove your thesis statement. And if you follow this guide, this is very easy. I will do this by, and then you say explore or introduce or illustrate, whatever word, your first idea. And then explore, introduce, whatever, your second idea. And then again with your third idea. That's it. And in a perfect world, this is 10% of your word count. Your introduction is not complete. Similarly, your conclusion will be simple. You conclude your essay by saying in conclusion, or to follow up with, or whatever. You restate your thesis statement, and you tell the reader how it was proven. You can say the words, it has been proven by, or you can instead say, this has been demonstrated by, or this has been emphasized by, or proven by your first idea, your second idea, and your third idea. You add your final remarks, if you have any, and in a perfect world, this is 10% of your total word count. that is your essay complete. Let's see this again in practice, because this is all well and good, but did this actually work? Well, I will show you. And so here we have the fully fleshed out essay that I submitted. This did receive full marks, and in it I follow every single step that we have spoken about today. I have my hook sentence here to introduce a topic and to attract interest. I have some context here to really present the puzzle. Is there a connection between poverty and terrorism? And then, as stated before, I very explicitly state my thesis. I will argue that poverty does not directly cause terrorism. Directly implies that there is a more complex and nuanced connection. Instead, I will introduce and argue for the concept of relative poverty. So this is my second main idea, second main paragraph, topic sentence. And I have my third and final idea here, and all of these prove my main thesis statement. So here's my topic sentence. There is no direct causal link. I have my second sentence here, the concept of perceived poverty as opposed to absolute poverty. And of course, finally, my third main idea, the experience of an unmet social contract of an improved life due to your hard work is further evidence of relative poverty being a more prominent factor in causing terrorism. So I have my three topic sentences. I used them in my introduction. I used them at the start of every paragraph, and I used them in my conclusion. And this essay did in fact receive full marks, as I will show you now. And so here we have my Turnitin page. I have my essay submission here. Question 1, 22 out of 22. Oh. Well, this isn't the right essay, but this did get full marks. I can show you another essay that... No, I will show you. Yeah, I will show you the essay. I think it was question 2. I received full marks on all of these questions. Is it this one? We will find out. Yes. From what kind of socioeconomic background you must share? 22 out of 22. So it was not that difficult once I knew what I needed to do. The problem is knowing what you need to do. So it was many years of work to try and provide examiners and teachers and professors with what was expected in essays without them actually explicitly telling us what they wanted. So the steps I've shown you in this video have taken me years to figure out, have taken me years to come up with, and it was very frustrating. I was very frustrated that I had to figure them out myself. I don't think anyone else needs to go through that struggle, and so I'll provide them here for you today. I hope that this video was helpful. If you have any ideas for future videos, please let me know in the comments down below. If you have any questions, feel free to message us directly by visiting us on Instagram or finding our page, or again leaving a comment down below. If you found the video helpful, please like it, share it, and subscribe for more content. Thank you very much for sticking through towards the end. I hope that this will help you as much as I hope it will, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Goodbye.